And the Right Honourable David Johnston joins me now. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on this important day to mark such a memorable life. And I know as Governor General, you had the privilege of many occasions with Prince Philip. Where did your most vivid memory take you today?
Oh, I think the sense of service of Prince Philip and what a rock he was to the Queen throughout their lifetime. You know, the notion of the servant as leader as servant is very much needed in our world today, where we focus so much on individuals and the self as opposed to the other self. He was the leader as servant, not having to be in center stage, but ensuring the Queen was supported in her role, and that he reinforced that role, and I think was so important in the success of the monarchy during her long tenure on the throne.
You know, the word consort, though, it sounds so perfunctory and impersonal, but you saw that relationship between the Queen and Prince Philip, you and Mrs. Johnstone, so many times. What were they like together?
Well, they were remarkably human, and they're seen as very formal and formidable people, I think, from the distance. But we were struck by how kind they were to us, and how comfortable they were with one another. We're very fortunate, Lisa. The custom is that when you're named as Governor General, you go and present your credentials to the Queen, and she gives you the certificate, which indicates that you begin your duties. And we came to Rideau Hall on October 2nd of 2010, but it was the previous August where we were invited to go to the UK, and we were delighted to learn that we'd be going to Balmoral Castle in Scotland, because that's where they spent August. And we went with every stitch of formal clothing you can imagine, and Sharon with mainly high-heel shoes. And it was totally informal. It's a very large estate. They secure the perimeter, but the castle is really a manor house, and it was so informal. One story just illustrates how down to earth they were. We were sitting at the Friday night dinner, and Sharon and the Queen were planning to spend the morning, Saturday morning, in the stables. They both love horses, and Sharon looked down at her feet, and the Prince looked down at her feet as well, and she said, "I don't have any proper shoes." And he looked at his wife's feet and kind of said, "Your shoes?" She went up to her bedroom and came down with a pair of her brogues, and Sharon put them on there at the table, and that's what she wore the weekend. And that was kind of the symbol of how they were so gracious, so kind. And Sharon and Prince Philip got along very well. She really appreciated his wit, and it's quite an unusual wit and well pronounced. And I guess another story I will tell, taking a little more liberty than I should. On the Saturday evening, we went for I guess you'd call it a barbecue, about 4 or 5 miles away from the Balmoral Castle, through the Highland, tiny little roads, hardly more than the width of a car. And the Queen was driving her Land Rover, and I was in it, and Sharon was in the Land Rover with the Prince driving it. And coming back at about 10 o'clock at night, it was really black and dark, and their car was ahead of us, and it was weaving a little bit on this little path, and there were uproarious laughter coming out as they were joking with one another, and I thought, my gosh, they're going to go over the edge and tumble half a mile down into the valley beneath, and do the Queen and I go down scrambling to find them, and what happens if they're killed? What kind of a story will that be about? And that was the wonderful kind of chemistry that Sharon had with Prince Philip, very much at ease and enjoying a lot of laughter and trading these quips back and forth.
You know, it's interesting to hear stories like that, so personal and as you say, so down to earth. He was also such a voracious reader and really an environmental campaigner before it was popular. Did you feel that you had so much in common with him?
Well, he was very broad in his interests, and his interests were very attuned to Canada. As I think you've mentioned a few times today, he made over 70 visits to Canada, which is really quite remarkable, even given his long tenure. And he really had a respect and a liking for Canadian people. I suppose it was a number of things. One, I think he had more freedom here to be himself. Two, his connection with the military was very strong. He held over 40 royal patronages, probably a dozen or so those being honorary colonel of the Royal Canadian Regiment, for example. I happen to be the colonel at the present time, which is honorary but not at his level. And that was very precious to him. And on several occasions, he was here for Royal Canadian Regiment ceremonies, and he had a memory of the people he'd met before, the history of the regiment. And it was a very personal thing to him, partly, I think, through his own military training and partly for his admiration for Canadians and their contribution to Commonwealth forces, especially during the Second World War, which he saw firsthand. And so his respect for Canadians was real. In October 2013, he became the first extraordinary companion of the Order of Canada, our highest honor, the first one to occupy that class of extraordinary. The motto of the Order of Canada is they desire a better country. And he desired a better country for Canadians and was so, I think, involved in working towards that and sort of cheering us on in his inimitable way.
He also seemed to manage to maintain independence while never assuming center stage. Would you agree that is not an easy lane to walk?
I think it's quite remarkable, especially because he was, in his own right, a forceful personality, a person of real tenacity, and came from very challenging circumstances and saw disruptions of government that were very, very fundamental. But he, I think, served in his role quite remarkably, and that's why I come back to this really important notion of the leader as servant, that there are various ways of serving, and he found his way, which was, I do not have to be center stage. And I understand that the Queen is the sovereign, and my job is to be sure that she manages those responsibilities as well as she possibly can. And my, has she managed them well.
She has, and this is such a great loss for her, such a love story. What are your thoughts for her today?
Oh, my heart goes out to her. He has been such a rock in her life, as she describes it, there from a very young age, and seeing with her so many challenges of history, difficult circumstances, managing always to be steady, to be thoughtful, to be caring, and recognizing that duty requires very often a stiff upper lip and a pretty firm backbone. And he was a large part of that stiff upper lip and firm backbone.
These are such challenging times for the world right now, and certainly for Canadians. Are there lessons in a loss like this after a life of duty and service, as you put it, and a life well lived?
Well, I'm particularly struck by the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, Lisa, which he began in the 1950s, and it's one of the few sort of youth organizations that has been truly sustainable and actually continues to be on a trajectory upwards in terms of embracing people. It's been very strong in Canada in the last 20 years and has reached out into the public high schools, into the northern communities, into the reserves, into the rangers in the Arctic territories, and present in most of the Commonwealth countries, but to my great surprise, also present in probably another 50 or so countries beyond the Commonwealth countries, not always bearing the name Duke of Edinburgh, but the basic structure and the objectives being the same, and that is helping young people develop their character, their own leadership qualities, their self-reliance, recognizing that mental and physical health go hand in hand, and having a sense of the other, of helping others and serving their community. Wonderfully important civic virtues, and that for him was really important. And it's been a legacy for Canada that will continue to be very important as we care about our youth and how they develop to be leaders and unselfish people in their own right. That for me will be one of the continuing legacies that I think will continue to inspire in very real ways.
That's a powerful legacy. The Right Honourable David Johnston, lovely to see you again, and thank you so much for your thoughts on Prince Philip tonight.
Thank you, Lisa. Good to be with you.